Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. We're going to be speaking with Radley Raven about the San Diego real estate market. Rad is a Pacific Northwest native and a really good friend of ours, serial entrepreneur, and we had the pleasure of working together up here in the Seattle area prior to him moving down to San Diego and building his career. So looking forward to catching up with him. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and enjoy. All right, Rad. So, obviously we know each other for a long time through, our siblings and friends, or my sibling and friends, and have been in touch with each other with your transition down from the Pacific Northwest down to San Diego. And now that you've kind of solidified yourself down there and your career and the different kind of branches and things that you're doing, want to kind of just check in and see how the market's doing down there. And why don't you start with, I guess, how you got into real estate and how you transitioned down south?
Yeah, you bet. After graduating college, I actually got a degree in entrepreneurship, which at the time was really rare, from Washington State. And, I was involved in businesses representing other entrepreneurs and manufacturers. And we kind of ran the course of that business for 5 or 6 years. I had a couple of partners, and we're all ready to kind of go our separate ways, and was thinking about my next move. And I always loved real estate. My dad was a custom home builder for many years, and it just seemed like the natural progression for me was to get into real estate. And right when I did, I had a client from Kirkland who actually wanted to move to San Diego. We had done a couple deals up in the Northwest there. And then he came down to San Diego and asked me to come along and help him with some of his transactions down here. Mm-hmm. So for the first couple of years, this is about 5 years by now, but I was going back and forth, maybe 50-50, and then just naturally started spending more time down here in San Diego. I don't know if it was the sunshine or the beaches, but eventually I made the decision to just move the family down and commit full-time down here. And it's been really great, although I do miss the Northwest. Yeah.
Well, you still have ties up here because you still own some investment properties. So
yes.
Yeah, you get a little back and forth. Well, awesome. So as far as kind of the general health and state of the market where you're at, what are you kind of seeing?
So, I it's probably similar to, what Seattle's going through in a sense, and just the broader market in the US. Interest rates obviously have affected affordability and people's capacity to purchase and things like that. And by design, of course, I think the government needed to step in and slow things down, and it's obviously worked across the board. San Diego, to me, when I first came down here, I, was always thought of as a vacation place, but I just didn't understand why it was so inexpensive, a few years ago. And I think what happened with COVID is it just accelerated people's plans to come here. And once people get here, they tend to stay. The other interesting thing about San Diego is it has a pretty diverse job market. Biotech's really big here. Of course, the travel industry is really big. But the job market's really strong, and the wages are really strong. So people can afford a lot down here. And eventually, the prices just started going up. And I think there's a bit of a buffer here for a lot of different reasons. The weather's amazing. The beaches are amazing. And the job market's really strong. And then, of course, you have some of the best schools in the country, too. So I think, although it has receded a bit, it's still maintained a lot of strength. The supply is still really low. I think on average across the board, it's under 2 months supply, which is, considered a seller's market for. It's definitely slowed down, but the area overall, I think it's performed really well over the next decade.
Yep. Do you have a kind of a lot of retirees that end up in your area, you find, or they kind of tend to go out?
Yeah, there are certainly retirees here. I don't really have, a large pulse on that segment of the market, other than I've had some clients, looking at coming down here to retire. The cost of living is really high, so that can be prohibitive. But I certainly agree it's a great place to retire if you can pull it off. But I don't have a great pulse on that segment.
Yep. And then as far as like the inventory numbers, I mean, we're all kind of, what I'm noticing just from talking to everyone around, the States, is that basically we're all experiencing a little flux in our inventory. In the hot neighborhoods, or the neighborhoods that may be considered more of the higher end neighborhoods, it seems though that the inventory is still pretty tight in those areas. Is that what you're experiencing as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, San Diego is the county's pretty large, and spread out, and there's lots of pockets, just like Seattle. And each one, is maybe more popular at the time than others. Del Mar when COVID hit, was like the place to go. There were some huge deals on the sand there. Rancho Santa Fe also, and they actually just entered the top 10 most expensive zip code recently. And then right now, I'd say Encinitas is probably the most popular. It's really neat. They have a cool downtown, great restaurants. It's coastal, and they've stayed really strong throughout this entire process.
Yep. Are you still seeing first-time buyers out there in the market, or is it primarily secondary or people moving up, moving down?
Yeah, there are some first-time buyers, but I would say most of them seem to be maybe from a different kind. We got people from Mexico come up and buy here, and so maybe their first time in the U.S., not necessarily their first real estate purchase.
Mm-hmm. What would an entry level? Sorry, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but entry level, let's say home, nice area. Maybe like a 3-bedroom, what would that you think start at?
Yeah, so average single family right now is like 1.167, something like that. So, and then of course it really depends on where you're at. If you're North County, coastal, like Encinitas, for example, the average price point is like 2.1 million in that range. And that kind of seems to be the going rate for family house, maybe a little more in 3 bedrooms, like 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom kind of thing. But the average detached is like 1.2, give or take.
Got it. Yep. Okay. And then do you guys have a lot of like condominium complexes, like larger multifamily projects?
There are, and they're a lower price point, of course. And downtown was it wasn't like the place to be necessarily. I think it's been evolving tremendously. Little Italy is really popular down there, great restaurants and really cool scene. And I think there's been more focus down there. Padres have been great. They had a great year, so people are really excited about that. And so I think that's been more popular than it has in the past. But yeah, we certainly do have a condo scene for sure.
As far as like the major industries or major companies, what do you think, who are the top?
Yeah, biotech seems, that's what a lot of people would probably say. And then you have Qualcomm, who's been here for a long time. They're a staple in the area. And then the travel industry, although fragmented, but it's definitely a segment.
Yeah, gotcha. So do you guys have like influx of people that have been moving to the area recently with these companies?
Yeah, and actually I'd say the largest was from the Bay Area, especially when COVID happened. All my listings, 50% of the showings were people in the Bay Area just relocating to San Diego, and taking advantage of the price difference too. San Francisco Bay Area is one of the most expensive areas in the U.S. And so we saw a big influx in that regard. It seems to have slowed since, but that was probably the largest I noticed.
Gotcha. Very cool. Anything else that you kind of want to touch on just about the market in general, and maybe even looking into next year? Kind of, I know right now a lot of people are starting to kind of make forecasts of, what's going to happen in 2023, which we never know, right? It's like,
yeah, right.
Crystal ball, but we could kind of guess what, maybe based on the trends. I mean, here it feels like everyone's kind of in a holding pattern. We're waiting to see kind of what happens after the new year. I think we're going to see a lot of flux of inventory come on in January and February, just for the people who wanted to wait, and then we'll see another flux probably right around that April-May timeframe. So I'm assuming that's probably what is your seasons, your selling seasons? Is it all year round, or do you have kind of certain times?
So this time of year is historically low. And then it starts to ramp up February, early spring, and goes up from there. So I anticipate a similar, situation. People are holding off right now. Buyers and sellers are kind of on the fence. And then, I think inventory will pick up January, February, and maybe there's some great buying opportunities at that point. And hopefully that kind of initiates some more sales and transactions. Because those are way down. Sales volume is, down like 50% or something like that.
Same here. The numbers again are pretty much across the board in all markets, Phoenix, Florida. It's all pretty much the same in terms of our inventory influx and then the sales flux. But what's interesting is we're still seeing the appreciation numbers year over year.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what's on my mind is what's going to change the supply. Is there going to be an influx? And that's really the only thing in my mind that's going to affect price. If inventory remains low, it's just simple supply and demand, unless the demand completely diminishes. But I don't really see that happening. And, you might see one that are a great deal, and I think keen buyers will pick up on those and pick those up. But I'm trying to gather, what event or what could happen that will really increase inventory. The other thing I have my eyes on is institutions. Last year they bought 15% of the market. That's pretty scary, especially for individuals. And, they're going to come in the market again. And, I don't know, JP Morgan has $1 billion fund that they've either prepared or preparing for new construction, straight, for rentals. But keep an eye on institutions, I think, is important. If they're buying, then it's only going to soak up the supply even further. And it'll be interesting to see how they perform against, iBuyers were pretty much a failure. They've all, for the most part, exited. And it'll be interesting to see how the institutions purchase versus, buying on algorithm or something like that. So if they're more successful, then I think that's something to really watch.
Yep. Speaking just lightly of, I guess, the rental market, do you have a pulse on that at all, or can speak to kind of?
Yeah, for sure. The rental market's really strong. I think San Diego's in the top 10 for one bedroom price. It's around like 2,500. And then the average price is in the 3,000s across all the, inventory. The rental market's really strong. And it's cooled off a little bit, but it's remained really strong. And again, little supply, lots of competition.
Yep. I think up here, we're experiencing the same thing. We have, the rental market in general sees a lot more kind of the ups or highs and lows. Every month is literally different. And we did see kind of a little bit of an oversupply of single family homes, which was a result, I think, from owners versus selling. They have equity in their homes, and so they just as soon keep that versus, selling at a lower price point as prices come down just a little bit maybe, or stabilize. And so they'll turn to renting. And so we saw kind of like a little bit of an influx of our single family rentals come on the market. So actually, I think our numbers for rental increases was about 1% year over year. That was last month's number. So we,
Wow.
yeah, a little stagnant, or not as high as our increases in the former years. But I do kind of feel like we're definitely in the downtown core here seeing more inventory on the rental side too. So just kind of being in tune. It's always important for us, as agents, to be in tune with the rental market and also the sales market, because they work hand in hand with each other. Buyers ultimately go, and renters will gravitate to the thing that's the most economical in the moment. And so you kind of have to paint the future picture for renters, to get into the market. And even though it's cheaper now, to rent, you kind of have to look into the future. So that's, I guess, been our messaging really to a lot of our people, our renters that are in our pool here, is like, I know that it might be more economical now to rent, but we got to kind of look to the future and build your wealth that way too. So, how are you guys navigating interest rates? Are you seeing like the 2-1 buy downs and a lot of lenders kind of getting creative down there?
Yeah, for sure. Interest rates are just high for a lot of people. So whatever, we can do creatively to make it a little more affordable. There's still cash in the market down here too. So, that's obviously a great way to go if you can, just to avoid that altogether. But yeah, people are certainly getting creative. Seller financing can be another great option also, especially with all the equity that a lot of people have in their homes. Makes it a little more achievable.
Yeah, very cool.
I know maybe a couple of years ago, there was a lot of building going on downtown Seattle, apartment wise. Has that kept up? What's kind of the latest there?
That's kind of what I was touching on. We a lot of the buildings, and I know downtown, so right on Denny and kind of Fairview, Boren area, there are 5, 6, 7 gigantic buildings, and more so Canadian-based developers. We have a few local developers in the mix, but really it's people from outside Seattle that have come in and invested. And so those complexes just basically came to market this year, and we're talking, over 2,000 plus units, and they are filling up, but they are offering deep concessions like 8 to 12 weeks free on, 12 to 18 month leases. And so they're making those concessions, but they're holding the rental rates high. And we all know why, developments do that, but it's put a little bit of a downward pressure on our overall values. And so that's why we're seeing kind of only the 1% year over year increase, is because, everyone's, competing basically with this new product. And the new product is extremely nice. Like back in the day, we used to say, oh, that's apartment quality, you rent a condo, or you want to live in a condo building. Well, now it's kind of turned where the apartment buildings are really bringing the services, and they're bringing like, these robust amenity packages.
The new apartments, we're all taking notes from like New York and Miami, and now all of them are like just world class.
So there's one building here specifically that basically they offer brunch every Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, free brunch for all the residents to come up to the rooftop and enjoy and kind of mingle. And they have a bar that's there Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, right? So they're bringing those type of services to the residents to kind of create that type of community, which is something we haven't seen. So
that's amazing.
That building's called the Modern, and then we have another one that's called Fifth Avenue, a residence of Fifth Avenue, and that's a very impressive building. It's our tallest residential building downtown, and the units are gorgeous, and it's just really top, high end, top notch in terms of the service level, from the experience from beginning to end. So they're, we're changing in terms of our living style here, but we don't have a new wave of condos coming in. And so that will be the next phase, but it's just, given where we're at right now.
Right.
I think we're probably, 5 to 10 years out before those even kind of come into play on the condo side.
Yeah. So what's like a typical one bedroom in one of the newer complexes going for these
I mean,
days?
you're looking 25 to 3, but it's a small space. So you might be at like, 500 to 600 square feet.
Right.
When you start getting up into the views and the nicer buildings, you could be definitely upwards of 35 to 4,500. And then, we actually have a couple apartment buildings on the market, or apartment units on the market right now for 25,000 a month, and upward of that. So,
Wow.
I know we've had a couple leased within our group that a little less than that, the 20,000 and below range, but they do get leased. They just stay on the market for a little bit longer, right? Got to find
Sure.
that right person. So, yeah, it's kind of been interesting to see our markets, both the sales and rental for the urban living condo apartment style transition over the last 10 years.
Yeah. Have you seen anyone testing or trying like micro units?
Yes, we had a lot of that. There was a wave in 2000, let's say 8, 7 and 8. There was one project in particular that got flipped into an apartment building right around that time, right? Because
Yeah.
recessionary stuff. So that never fully came on. There was another building that has backtracked and was trying to come out of the ground in micro units. But I think now they're kind of redoing everything because they, I think COVID put space on everyone's mind. So people
Yes.
rather pay for space or have the space versus cramming themselves into a small living situation. So yeah, we're not seeing too much of that, although the new floor plans of the Canadian-based developers are quite a bit smaller than what our resale inventory is. So
Yeah.
looking at the new construction stuff, like, a one bedroom that is, it could be 600 square feet on average in a building. And 2 bedrooms might be on average like 1,000 to 1,200 square feet. Normal, whereas the older inventory, you're definitely looking at that 700 and 800 square foot for one bedroom, or 1,200 to 1,500 square feet for 2 bedrooms.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite a difference. One thing that's been on my mind since, this huge rise in appreciation and everything was right before COVID happened in San Diego, at least, like the least expensive, best value properties were the largest, biggest square footage, acreage, or big lot sizes. Those were, nobody wanted to touch them. And then overnight, they became the most popular. So what is that property now like in the market? Is there a property that, people don't really want or need at the moment that has a lot of upside? And maybe that's a great way as a buyer to think, or especially if you're an investor, what is that property currently? Is there one at the moment? But just something I think to keep in mind, as the market, moves forward.
Yeah, and I guess another property was multifamily, right? Commercial and multifamily during that time period too took such a hit, and no one really wanted to touch it. And now everything's on the upswing as well.
Right. Right.
But that is interesting. Do you think the larger properties you said before COVID was it price point, or it was just because it was, maintenance and just like, older?
Yeah. Yep. And lots of people were downsizing at the moment. There were kids had moved on to college. They were thinking about retiring, and everybody wanted to downsize. And then all of a sudden it was like a complete reversal in those, and still like people want yard and space. It's just really interesting how that played out.
So you thinking there could be a play then on the micro home style, just because they've been kind of neglected, and as people feed back into spaces, or I guess try to cut their costs or become, more, because they are economical. It's a luxury to have space, right?
For sure. I think it's something to watch. Absolutely. Especially as things get more expensive and less affordable. If I were to guess or pick, I'd say that would be my pick right now, I think.
Interesting. As far as let's say, now this is kind of a different industry-ish, but remodels and new construction and just overall like the general contracting side of things, working with contractors, are you seeing where you're at, is there a great supply, or is it really hard to get contractors out to properties and get jobs done?
Yeah, I think it's still pretty difficult. And anything that's, been renovated or new construction and priced appropriately sells pretty quickly.
In terms of like the general workers themselves, though, like the workforce and actually having the resources to, let's say, remodel, if you have a client who's looking to do a flip, or if they're, just looking at buying it something that's older and remodeling it quickly, is that something that's accessible in your market?
And notice, I think it's always a challenge to like find the right person for that, or contractor or company. And they always have a challenge. It's definitely achievable, and I haven't really noticed anything adverse there.
Yeah. Seattle is a hard market to work in for those things. Just people are booked out so long, so that's
Right.
up, which is making the older inventory a little bit more palatable, because the modern buyer, especially during COVID, just want to move it ready, right? You don't want a project,
Right.
an agenda. So now that the home services industry maybe is loosening up just a little bit, that is those properties are becoming, I guess, more appealing, or more approachable, or more conceivable, I guess, for the buyers that are out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's a good way to go, especially when everything's so expensive.
For sure. Cool. All right. Well, I think that unless you have anything else to kind of share tidbits, that was really great to kind of touch base and get the general overview. We'll for sure post your information, so anyone out there that's looking to kind of purchase or has questions about the market or sell, they know who to talk to.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm happy to help, and I love doing this. So let's make it a habit.
Cool. That sounds good. Let's do a check-in the new year and see where things are.
Yeah, good idea. I like it.
Good. Well, thanks, Rad. Appreciate it. And you have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Thanks, Ash. Talk to you soon.
Bye.